Hi, Greg. Once again, it's another one of those episodes of Write Once, Read Many. Hey, Vale. This time we'll be covering 21.6. And you know, as you can see the speed draw of the art going, we've got this image that you may be able to foresee already is a bunch of sprees popping out with Butcher in the background as the lone other imposing figure. And the fun thing is, because all the sprees are different, then, you know, we get to see tons of cute little variations on the costume. It's pretty cool, right? Oh, and with the two of you here, Vale and Craig, I shall remind us all of the audience participation question. What do you think of the casual way the Undersiders and the Ambassadors treat the death of one of the new members of the Ambassadors? I wonder, what will people think? Paste that into my document. Write down the question I thought of for 21.7, which I actually did think of one. Alright. Might reword that at the last minute, but wrote down the question I was thinking about while I was wandering around outside. Vale says that notifications are either off or turned down. Oh yes, you enjoy hearing the ping when you post to my Discord. Yes, I did. I remembered to turn them off. So you know, good going, me. Actually remembered this time. Pretty cool. But anyway, I want to not stare at those answers. I want to chapter thing here. I don't know what the themes are. I mean, the second half of the last little portion of the chapter has like clear themes of like recovery and found family and like that kind of thing, but the first half, the themes is tactics. Skitter's really good at tactics and strategy, both tactics and strategy. That's how you win a battle. You need both. I don't know. The fight is just kind of like it's like a weirdly fun, silly fight for how like death is technically on the table stakes the fight is. I don't know. It's really strange. I really like this chapter, but I don't. I guess I wouldn't have expected. I didn't remember this fight being quite so comical. Felt more tense on previous reads, but for whatever reason, this read through, it was just like a complete joke to me. But in a fun way. Vale says, she has become a good leader, not in the makes people feel better sort of way, more in the makes enemies cease to exist sort of way. Yeah. But I think that Taylor also makes people feel better long run, even if she does terrible things to them short run. I mean, think of how cute the scene is with Rachel and her minions later. They've found a path forward for themselves. Anyway, So, now we've got the fully realized art. It just, the speed draw finished. I accidentally posted this when I was trying to send it to somebody because on the computer, I'm not as used to, like, looking and noticing on what exactly thing I was on. So I'm used to using Discord on the phone. The phone's worse, but, I'm just used to that interface. So even all the people who don't watch the show but are in the Discord, which is still crazy that we have a community like that, they you'd think that the people who are more dedicated would be in the Discord. You know what I mean? It just seems backwards from a regular streamer podcast. Anyway, even they get to see. But let's get on to the chapter itself. It starts in heavy rain at a stakeout with the Undersiders, except for Tattletale and the Ambassadors, aside from Accord, and a whole bunch of underlings, all watching the hideout of the Teeth. Feeling the need to move up her timetable because of the meeting with Miss Militia, Taylor is securing things for the Undersiders. This is the first time the Undersiders' collective group is fighting the Teeth, but they're striking now because the Teeth are on the back foot after they fought first the heroes, and then they were attacked by Parian stuffed animals. So we get lots of descriptions of, like, kind of the battlefield, like how it's set up. It's a big open area. There's not a good vantage point. They're in the rain. There's a whole bunch to it, but we get all that, and we see all the crap Taylor's doing with her bugs and where they're hidden out. They've got spotters on the roofs. They've got minions attending to dogs. We learn about the new capes who have joined the Ambassadors. And then the inside of the building, the Teeth are in is described a little bit, but only by, like, bug sense. They're a rowdy bunch. They've got multiple overlapping TVs going, and several unpowered dudes are fighting each other with people, like, watching and yelling. Rowdy behavior. Regent starts to complain that they've been standing in the rain for over 20 minutes, and he's apparently been running a commentary through all of this about anything that he's looking at a given moment. Taylor justifies herself some. Regent gives some back talk, and then Taylor explains things more. She's annoyed the whole time, of course. But right as Regent goes from the argument back to just complaining, Taylor gives the order to attack. She perfectly times it so that she's attacking right as the chili they were about to eat finishes. No dinner for you. As she gives the announcement to her side that they're attacking, Skitter's swarm enters the building and does all the bad stuff all at once. She ties people in their clothes to bathroom stalls. She drags away money and drugs, I'm sure. She's chewing the wires on the TV. She puts the bugs in the chili pot and mixes it all up. Nothing is sacred to her. Skitter comes to understand the Teeth's basic battle strategy as things start. Butcher's strong enough on her own to walk out and, by herself. And as she approaches, Spree's able to set up, and he starts releasing a machine gun fire of rapidly degrading duplicates of himself that completely clog up the battlefield. And, Taylor's putting bugs on all her enemies and stuff and has them crawling all through the piles of Spree duplicates. Greg says, "You can't just destroy Chili like that, you monster!" Add to that long list of Taylor crimes. Yeah, whenever she's like, I cut off someone's toes, I let a man die, I put bugs in the chili pot. Where was I? So, Codex, who's one of the ambassadors, moves up, and we see her new power. She does, like, an area of effect attack that causes brain damage and memory loss. It's pretty fucked up, if I'm being honest. much like many powers are. But she hits a crowd of she hits the crowd of duplicates with it, and they mostly lose all their forward momentum. They were like very low quality duplicates to begin with, brain wise, and then they lose what little they had to spare. Jacklight, another new one, lets out these little things that they will call jacklights at some point, but they sort of act as like gravity and energy distortion. So like a spree dupe runs past one and gets like arc swung around the light and crashes into a wall, for example. And let's see here. Ligia is there too. I'm sure I'm saying that wrong, but Ligia, or Ligia or something, is able to create massive jets of water and then like suck the water back into a pocket dimension thing. So is like firing geysers at them and like not being worried about sucking up a few duplicates into the pocket dimension to, drown in water hell. Gaps start forming, and like sprees are getting through or whatever, because there's just so many of them. So Skitter has Rachel step in, metaphorically step in. She's releasing hounds into the mix. So 4 of the dogs go in and they're smashing through a bunch of the dupes, and they actually get stopped up when they reach Vex's force field. Vex is one of the teeth, and apparently she has like low-grade force fields that are like razor sharp, and she just accumulates a whole bunch of them in one spot, and they become super dense and hard to get through. Taylor wanted the dogs to like be able to muscle through, but they actually couldn't get through it. But it didn't damage them seemingly too much because they've got bone face instead of flesh face. So Rachel starts having the dogs sort of tic-tac off the walls like they're all doing, early 2000s parkour. And they get past the fields, but the first one that jumps over is intercepted by Animos, one of the teeth capes that's like a changer. Fighting is some sort of undescribed 4-legged creature that's almost the size of the dogs. This is when Butcher enters the fight, and we start to get Taylor's her own mental running commentary on each power being used as Butcher uses it, and like what it's from. And all this stuff is like really cool to me from like a I love the capes and the powers stuff. But when Taylor abandons it like midway through, which I don't even remember if I like noted that, when she does, it's like, okay, thank you for stopping telling me over and over again all the little things. So where was I? So Butcher is able to teleport, and teleports past the Razor force fields. And when she teleports, then her like exit point has a small but fiery explosion. And one of the things that we already knew about Butcher is that she can't miss, and she's strong enough. I'm pretty sure we had sort of learned this from other commentary about her, but she's strong enough that she carries around a Gatling gun. And lucky for us, she only fires one burst of shots before the gun jams. She wounded a dog with the shots, but it doesn't even take it out of the fight, so, it's not like dying, like this has happened in previous occasions. When the dog snaps at her, like at Butcher, then she teleports away just in time because she's also got a danger sense. She decides if the gun won't fire, then it's better to just whack people with it, and she sends Bentley sprawling with a hit. So, he's generally the size of a minivan or so pretty good hit. Animos is being pinned down by the dog it's fighting. Citrine is actively using her powers on him to keep him from using secondary powers and stuff. And it's unclear, but maybe like she had weakened him in a way to get the dog to be able to win more directly, but who knows? He tries to use a shriek that's supposed to temporarily remove powers from the person it's like hitting. But even though Taylor's able to hear the shriek because of Citrine's power, she doesn't lose her powers. Also, that's a pretty freaking sweet, like, secondary power. You change into, like, a deadly animal, and then you do a shriek that takes away the power of the cape you're fighting. Like, it didn't work out in this case because of, like, them having more powers and more versatile crap, but, like, pretty cool. Vale says, yeah, there's a lot of Trump powers on the field in this fight. Between, like, the Animos power, Gru, Citrine, I would even argue, like, Butcher's death effect is, like, a Trump power. Yeah. So, where was I? Butcher starts moving in, and Citrine retreats immediately, as Tattletale had warned about Gru or Citrine having their power interact with Butcher's. Like, potentially Citrine could kill Butcher, but also, like, just the way powers are, I wouldn't want those two powers touching. Citrine sort of calls in an attack from Codex and Jacklight. They start blasting, but Butcher teleports away. Othello is just standing in the back all casual-like with his hands in his pockets, but his shadow self is continually slashing Hemorrhagia, and she's able to seemingly, like, withstand the attacks to a certain degree because she uses her own blood for powers. So she's forming up blood stuff, but it's more or less completely locking her down. She can't go anywhere while she's being slashed. And Imp tases Spree, which, if we hadn't already realized it, this might clue us in that Imp is the reason Butcher's gun jammed. Vale says, I'm surprised Skitter didn't want the Butcher power. Just think of how much good she could have done with it. And it comes with instant friend group. Yeah, I feel like there's some points in the story where Taylor would have been like, yeah, but maybe I should get this Butcher power. Anything for more power. Butcher starts using her ability to inflict agony on people, and apparently it works on mutant dogs because she's using it to throw Bentley off his stride. When Regent knocks her off balance to help Bentley, then Butcher teleports right next to Regent and Skitter, using a power that makes them mindlessly attack, in addition to the agony power. So they're kind of flipping out a little bit. Skitter actually gets in a stab to the back of Butcher's neck before getting elbowed with both super strength and a power that makes your wounds get worse over time if they were done by Butcher. Because of Lizard Tail's power, she keeps healing very slowly instead of getting all fucked up by Butcher. But because there's, like, these persistent damage attacks, they also don't really get healed by Lizard Tail much. Whereas normally it's, like, seemingly pretty good fast healing. Butcher throws Regent and Biter into a wall, and Taylor thinks with Lizard Tail's power actively being used on them, they might live through it. So, must have been a pretty hard throw. Butcher's rapidly teleporting and switching targets at the moment. She goes after Rachel, then after the ambassadors. Rachel pulls up Taylor onto the back of the same dog she's on, and Taylor says that they should save Codex. So they're able to get over to Codex and get her sitting side saddle on the back of the dog. But then Butcher sort of changes tactics. The teleporting's not doing quite enough, and the gun is gone. So Butcher pulls out and strings her bow. And the current Butcher used to be Quarrel, who had killed the previous Butcher in some protracted fight in New York City. I always imagined they were in some rooftop battle because, like, it's New York City, and they're superheroes. But they don't actually say for sure. Let's see here. Yeah, so once she has the bow strung and all, Codex tries to blast Butcher with the brain drain attack, but Butcher teleports to a roof and shoots Codex, who's dead in a flash, just like that. An arrow through the neck. And she's smashed into Taylor's back and like slumped onto her. And it tears away a portion of the armor on like Taylor's shoulder where the arrow strikes through beyond the neck. It's some grim stuff. And then this bit is the only part where I'm a little confused what was happening. Butcher was pointing at Taylor's teammates and then like decides to change targets to her and Rachel, which is like, that's fine. That's not the super confusing part. But Rachel then gets the dog to run them out of the range of the arrow, which, like, okay, maybe the space warping thing can make it hit, but only within its normal range, I guess. So they start getting away. And the part that I'm confused about is not that part. I'm not questioning the rules of the powers. That's fine. I don't understand why Butcher kept following those two and didn't just start taking out all the people who were still in range. Because, like, if I were Butcher, once I was in range mode, I would just take out every single person I could currently see. And then once I was done with that, move on. Maybe I'm missing something. But regardless, the actual event in the book is that, yes, instead of shooting at them, she does get focused on Taylor and Rachel. Dog runs out of her range, and all the dogs are like running with them, so it's like a pack of dogs all running off in one direction, and Taylor's trying to trip her up, doing like nets in locations, but like if she lands directly on the net, it burns it up and stuff. So it's stopping a lot of the plans from working. And when they've reached the edge of the city, they are sort of already running on the beach. Butcher tries to shoot at them from a roof, which would give the extra range, But Skitter does get the net around the Butcher's legs this time, and she sort of tumbles off the roof. She teleports before she goes too far, but she still has a like super hard landing. She seems to keep the momentum of the fall. And now we get to the kind of like gritty part of the chapter and part of the plan. One after another, the dogs run in and like shake Butcher around and then like run away. And they're driving her back without killing her on purpose. Once they've done it long enough, she's out on the beach and she tries to use her like stone-shaped power to make another arrow. But she starts like talking to herself and freaking out. And we can realize perhaps, or maybe we have to wait until they mention it later, but it becomes apparent that they've gotten her to go within the range of the submerged Cherish with her like always on power. And Butcher is driven to the extreme and takes herself out by making a spike with the stone-shaped power and then teleporting up and falling on it. So, it's like, ooh. Taylor makes sure that Rachel didn't get the credit for the kill, powers-wise, and that Butcher's mind hasn't gone into her. We're in the clear. From a powers perspective, it would make sense if Butcher's power had decided that, like, it was being heavily affected by Cherish in the last little bit, and would be, like, nuanced enough to understand that that was the actual cause of the death. Because, like, in some ways the powers are really dumb, but they're also really smart. In other ways, it's kind kind of bizarre. And it does kind of go down to the individual power because they all have their own weird perspectives. But yes, it thought that deadly emotion beams were worse than getting shaken by a dog. Vale says, did Butcher join with Cherish? I don't recall that. They actually don't say, but Regent jokes about it happening, and I don't know. I kind of think it would, I guess. Unclear. So what I had written here, I would have been worried that Cherish would gain the short range teleports and then would teleport up out of the sea. But this doesn't come back to bite us later, so we all lucked out. The crew, Brockton Bay, we all did it. And you know, Vale, maybe you're right. Maybe she just dies and the power goes away. But also, Vale just said, Cherish needs friends more than Taylor, so that ending works out very well. There you go. There you go. Man, I kind of think if Spree killed Butcher, it would be insane because, like, if you just, like, launched out a whole bunch of, like, semi-powered duplicates or whatever, man, there's too many possibilities. Butcher's power is... it presents so many things. Anyway, before they reach the rest of the group, Taylor asks if she can come back to Rachel's place. And, after this, Rachel's like, why? And she's like, to talk. And Rachel's pushing back against it. And then she kind of accepts before they reach things. And they confirm that things are mostly fine. Regent didn't get pulverized against the wall. Yay! We did it. And only one person from a different Cape team died. Woo! Vale says the worst possibility would be Imp because you would never know you were fighting anyone. Yes, clearly. So I guess the last little bit is Gru says success, and then success, I said. The entire group, even the straight-backed ambassadors, seemed to react with relief. Guess my sister has one more kill under her belt, Regent commented. 14 voices in Cherish's head to keep her company as she spends the next few centuries alone at the bottom of the bay. The bottom of the bay. Regent's accent will continue to devolve. This is when we get a page break. Vale says, oh man, imagine if it was Tattletale though. Her worst nightmare. 100 versions of her that get dumber and dumber and all they really do is notice things. Oh, man. Well, Tattletale's power doesn't work like Butcher's power, so I'm afraid when Tattletale gets killed, she doesn't go into Spree. Anyway. So the chapter opens up, there's a toddler there at Rachel's hideout? I don't know what to call it. Lair? Dog zone? At the JT dog zone. And apparently the man from the fight who had one of, two of Rachel's dogs, is like a father. Rachel's going around and doing dog stuff right away, ignoring the people. She does ask Taylor if she wants food, and when Taylor says yes, then Rachel just calls out to no one in particular for someone to make food, which I find kind of hilarious. Vale says, oh, I mixed up my metaphor, but I still stick with that end result, plus Spree being the funniest outcome. The Tattletale plus Spree. So then Cassie chimes in Cassie was also at the fight as one of the many people holding Doge on the Doge chains. Um, uh, Cassie is not like Cassie will only be in like one scene here, but I'm pretty sure Cassie was the person on the forums who said that they wanted to join Rachel and was all excited. And the people were like, in real life, being near a villain might not be chill. And then it turned out fine. And Charlotte helped connect the dots between Cassie and Rachel. Um, and we will see Cassie down the road in future stuff, but just not really in the near future. So yeah, Cassie's there. Rachel wants hamburger, and so um Cassie asks if she should cook something else, and Taylor says vegetables because she wants them to eat something healthier. And then they settle on asparagus, so they're gonna have hamburgs and asparagus. Gotta get a slightly mixed diet. You can't just only have hamburgs. Um, so they got like Barker and Biter and the veterinarian, and they don't mention him here. He was at the fight, but the guy who has the slashed face from the Siberian was there. He's not important enough for Taylor to see him in this scene. Um, and Rachel's actually just taking it easy while the others are working, which seems like maybe she can finally do that because she has enough underlings or whatever. But in the past, it didn't seem like she would have been comfortable doing that. And then Taylor sits with Rachel and brings up the idea that she is that like Rachel's causing problems the way she's patrolling her territory, and uh, um, basically she offers that somebody move over to the other side of the portal. I'm having a hard time like deciding whether to intersperse this with the stuff that's going on in the background. I guess I'll just say a bunch of stuff is happening in the background, like the dude who was with them at the fight collects his daughter who was with a babysitter and like hands money over to the babysitter, and a bunch of people are sort of Taylor thinks that like everybody here has different like problems, whether it be like mental or like just social or whatever, but like various traumas and issues or whatever. And it's sort of she's seeing this as like Rachel has been able to help other people who are super far gone. So yeah, she brings up the portal. She's like saying that there's gonna be more or less another Brockton Bay on the other side of the portal, and that they want the other side of the portal to actually be where she patrols for trouble and keeps things down. Rachel initially says like, "Oh, it'd be hard to feed my dogs and stuff," and then Taylor's basically like, Tattletale's gonna have us own both sides of the portal. We'll probably have an even stronger presence on that side. So, like, this is not gonna be a problem for us. The food thing. And then she tells her to think about it. And then, the people and the dogs are getting along, and Taylor's like, wow. And then Rachel says that she has like specifically picked the dogs here to get along with the minions at this like shelter. And then Taylor's like taken aback for a moment, And when she asks about it, Rachel's telling her like the thing that she said in the limo or whatever with Dino, and she was like, "You have to match the dogs to the people, and the people to the dogs. It's a two-way street with dog ownership." Then she actually she's thought about that a lot. Um, so there were more questions I wanted to ask, but I didn't want to spoil the quiet relief I felt at hearing her say that. And so they just hang out. They don't really talk. And then bitch is throwing the dog ball and stuff, and Taylor comes over and she's throwing the ball too, and they're not talking. They're just having like a pretty good time. And then the food's ready, and they start eating. Not everybody eats. They like say that Barker and Biter don't eat and stuff. But I think generally that it's a group meal for all minions. In the traditional sense, not the mascot character. So where were we? So they finish the meal and stuff, and Rachel's really casual with her followers and stuff, and Taylor sort of watches Rachel do her thing for a while, and then sort of passes out on a chair. And when she wakes up, there's a blanket on her, and Rachel's like laying down with Cassie to fall asleep on a couch, and then Rachel starts to get up when Taylor gets up, but she's like, "Oh, don't get up for me. I was just leaving anyway." And then as she's about to leave, Taylor thinks about how probably Cassie is older than like Aisha and Vista, but she still just can't think of her on that level. She says something about her screamed lost, but I think the other thing is that Taylor just has this extreme bias toward parahumans, like a lot of other parahumans do, where it makes normal humans like harder for them to focus on. And she's thinking a lot about sort of the implications of Rachel like having these damaged people with her, and like if they'll be able to heal each other. And then she says bye, and it's really like, this is really like sad because the bottom of the chapter we're gonna see it's like, I've gotta do this tomorrow morning, and I'll finally face tag, and like it's clear she's gonna leave the team. So like the last thing that she was gonna say was just bye, and then Rachel says bye, and then says thanks like separately, and Taylor feels like, it doesn't say it this way, but like such a swell of like being thanked by Rachel is like, I think very big for Taylor. Uh it's she always wants to be thanked all the time, and like Rachel is this person who she thinks like, I'm going to put in all this effort, and uh it's worth putting in the effort, but she's never going to like connect back. And then it does, and then she's like, maybe they could heal each other in their own ways. And it's very sweet. And then she sort of sees this as helping her move forward with her decision that she's already made up her mind about, whatever she's going to do at the end of the next chapter. Vale says she was an actual friend to her. Oh god, the thing is blocking the part of the sentence. It's the best thing she does in the book, in my opinion. Um, Being a friend to Rachel is the best thing Taylor does in the book. Gotcha. She sort of thinks about a few things. Apparently, it's been 2 days since she talked to Miss Militia. With the teeth dealt with, not all gone, but dealt with. Then they were like almost everything is out of her way. They say Hemorrhagia slipped away, as had Reaver. I don't remember what Reaver's power was. Maybe I just was not reading closely, but I don't remember him doing anything in the fight. Reaver. Yeah, they just never say what he did. And then, like, somebody in the comments says, can't remember what Reaver does, though. Which I find funny. I'm sure they told us on a previous chapter. Let's look at this. Women's bookkeep. The teeth redirected from Reaver. Not important enough. The only thing that we know about him is escaped after the teeth were defeated by the Undersiders. All the other ones say the powers. That's kind of funny. Anyway. So yeah, and then, you know, she's sort of thinking about that, about the most inconsequential member of the teeth. And then says, I'm just going to read the last two things of it. Now I had to face everything I'd been dreading. I'd spent time here because I was procrastinating, putting off the inevitable. I couldn't put it off any longer. If I didn't bring myself to do it soon, it would only get harder to bring myself to do it. Tomorrow morning, I thought, I face off with Tag and the rest of the PRT. So yeah, she's gonna do her thing, whatever her thing is. I'm gonna be sneezing, you know, that's my thing right now. So final chapter thoughts. What a silly, weird fight to happen, and then, like, the brief time we get between Taylor and Rachel, I think, is very powerful. It's like that whole thing where just the economy of the way Wildbow writes sometimes is, like, just super dense with meaning. Like, when he wanted to write this scene, I think that we got all the right emotions. Maybe I'm projecting other people having the same feelings about it, but I felt as though this chapter's the like little extra section at Rachel's hideout was, like, very effective in a very short amount of time. So yeah. Good chapter. Complicated, silly fight. 1 zillion people fighting. As far as the arc stuff, this is like the big fight of the arc. There's the like really minor scuffle between the PRT and Skitter, and then there's the, like, punch up between Skitter and the Fallen and the Haven capes. And then this is like a dense, beefed out fight. Like, man, if we kept doing this kind of storyline, look at the kind of fights they could get into. But yeah. Bill says, I think he tends toward dense meaning and content. It's very well proven out as it increases as he continues to write. Yep. Sorry I keep faltering. It's that thing that Vic always brings up where there's the, like, icon at the bottom right corner of the chat that, like, I can get it to alter if I, like, hover my mouse over it and move away from it. and I can see what's under it while it's changing states, but yeah, it's pretty inconvenient. Thanks, YouTube. Yeah, the remainder of this arc is gonna be like talkies and Taylor doing whatever thing she keeps mentally referring to. Characters, there was a hell of a lot of them. I put Animos, Vex, and Reaver as one entry. We learn no character details about these three characters. I think Animos' power is lit as hell. I want that power. Vex has a pretty cool power with the like piles of razored up force fields. Hemorrhagia, we learn hates it when you put the bugs in the chili pot. That's not where they go. Spree, we don't learn that much about his personality, but I just feel like it must say something about him that he sends out like legions of dumb versions of himself. Butcher, we learn that she's unstable enough that a Cherish attack defeats her. Not that Cherish hasn't defeated others. But it seemed to go very quickly with Butcher. Codex, she was dressed in white, and her power seemed pretty fucked up. So, out of the ones to die, probably the main one that you want to die. Like, you know, Jacklight's power, you swing people, and that's fine. Whatever. But Codex's power gives brain damage and memory loss. Vale says, I love the name Spree. It has so much potential for any setting. It has a ton of potential meaning in it. Yes, but also, if only I could create the candy Spree as quickly as Spree can create duplicates. I would fire out a wave of candies like the candy elemental from the distant past in Adventure Time, but also I would eat the Spree. Man, I gotta be real. I would have health problems if I could just generate Spree candies. I'd just be eating them all day. My solution to not eating them is mostly not buying them. Let's see. Jacklight. Okay, so Codex we don't really know much about other than like totally fucked up power. Dead. Jacklight. We don't know much about Jacklight. Some dude. These are all real high performing type A personalities. Vale says, I think the ability to generate nearly any sort of food in unlimited quantities would lead to health issues. Unless you could create all types of foods. Because if I could create healthy, like, foods that I liked with no cost to them, like, you know, part of the issue with doing broccoli versus doing something else is that, frankly, I gotta put more work into the broccoli. If I could just generate myself some pre-cooked out broccoli, although I'll be real, I'll eat brock uncooked too. I'm a pretty big brock fan. You know, I would make some carrots. I'd make some berries too. I'd try to be real mixed with all the food types. And you know, I could if I'm generating meat without hurting an animal, that's pretty cool too. That solves a lot of problems. This food generation is starting to sound like a really good power. Vale says cornucopia was a highly sought after cape until people realized she could only make unlimited corn. Nah, they'd still want that for biodiesel and for feed. Oh man, imagine how much chicken feed you could get if you had the unlimited corn power. Plus, you'd have to tell corny jokes. Because, corn. So, yeah, Jacklight, some man. We know nothing about him. Pretty neat power, though. I like all the weird powers we see here. Lizard Tail 2. I wanted to pull out that it was pointed out to me by the wiki that, in fact, this is not the first Lizard Tail, and has been confirmed at some point by Wildbow that, in fact, despite previously having a henchman named Lizard Tail who was murdered in front of the camera, Accord just got another healing guy and immediately was like, good, you are also Lizard Tail. So that's incredibly funny. For all of Accord's, like, oh, everything has to be just perfect and, like, a really unique, like, thing that matches it perfectly. It's like, oh, I got a second healer? Name him the same thing as the previous healer. It's like, their powers don't even work the same way, idiot. Accord's such a rube. Vale says, I bet the vial was named Lizard Tail too. Oh no, Vale had said correct about cornucopia, the definitely very story important cape cornucopia, that it's inert, dry, unpoppable corn. I think that this is saying she was exiled, but the word that I hear, that I see spelled out is exilted, and I would say that that's like when you're exalted and get exiled at the same time. You're exilted. Not the greatest feeling ever. So after Lizard Tail 2, the guy who can't even get his own cape name, we get Ligia or Ligia or something. It keeps making me think of that Pokemon that in the anime they say Lugia, but I'm like, it's got to be Lugia, right? Like Lugia? And, I acknowledge as an adult that there can be a hard G in front of an I because GIF exists. And so does the word gift. And so does the word give. I mean, I know they're all rooted the same, but clearly Lugia is from the Latin root of hawking a Lugia, and so is Ligia. But Greg says, could be worse. Could be exiled and jilted. That's true. That's true. That is worse. You know what? I'm going to look up this word to see if it's an obvious word that I just have never known before. Ligia? Yes. An early short story by American writer Edgar Allan Poe. So it's a Poe reference. It follows an unnamed narrator and his wife, Ligia. The imagery, the ye old imagery to go with this is quite cool. I'm seeing a 1919 rendering of what some artist thought this story should look like, and it's all crazy looking. I'll post it in the Discord. It's just on the Wikipedia page for this, but pretty cool. So that let us learn about Edgar Allan Poe for a second. We learned nothing about this character's personality. Another seemingly effective in combat lady. Othello, he's content to just put his hands in his pockets. He's a cool dude. You could think he'd be fighting on both planes of existence, but he's just like, no, that's for other people. Citrine, pretty good battle commander, seemingly. Keeps her self cool under pressure. There's a reason she's been able to survive with a cord for so long. And then moving on from the ambassadors, we got the O'Daly family. These guys are still sticking with Taylor, even though they got like almost wiped out. That's very loyal of you, O'Dalys. They were doing the binoculars, spotting from the roofs kind of thing. So they weren't actually down in the fight, but still, with some crazed murderer like Butcher on the loose, you don't really want to be around. We also got no lines from and no like stuff that they did, but Miner, Brooks, Pritt, Senegal, and Jaw were all there. They were all fighting Reaver. Barker and Biter were there. We didn't really learn anything about them in the fight. We see the main minions of Rachel had also attended the fight. Broad-bellied man, Cassie, veterinarian who adopted Ink, unnamed man slashed by the Siberian. And they all showed that they are good at holding dogs on chains. Aisha doesn't get any lines. She gets like some pretty solid like MVP style activity where she stops the Gatling gun from being a thing. She defeats Spree and probably did other stuff that we didn't even think about. Alec and his two randos. We learned that Alec is not only probably controlling rival gang members, but also he's still being an asshole to Taylor. So, you know, we get some good Alec dialogue, some funny stuff. But the good Alec dialogue only reminds us that we didn't get any goddamn Aisha dialogue, which is like the better version of Alec dialogue. Brian being supportive of Taylor despite the current situation. You know, I will say about the broad-bellied man, Cassie, the veterinarian, and the doctor who adopted Ink, and the man slashed by Siberian. It was nice to see them in all those like domestic scenes. I mean, the broad-bellied man clearly has a lot going on. He's like unable to look people in the eye or whatever Taylor was saying, and he has the daughter and stuff, and was like awkward when he had to give the money to the babysitter just because he's like seemingly bad at social interactions. And you know, it was good to see Cassie for the first time. So I went over their group too fast. Cassie, great to see. Guy who was slashed by the Siberian, I'm glad you're still with Rachel. I mean, it would have sucked if you got slashed and then you were just like, also, I'm leaving this group, and so you didn't even get anything out of it, you know? Oh, Greg has to dash to handle some stuff. Yes, not much more on the episode, so don't worry too much. You're barely missing anything. But yes, Brian's being supportive. Rachel, Bastard, Bentley, Dakota, Bear, and Rat Dog are all there. Probably other dogs too, but those are the ones we get the names of. So the new ones are Dakota, Bear, and Rat Dog. Great name for one of Rachel's dogs. And, you know, completely separate from this, one of the things that I call Boston Terriers. And as a not lifetime, I haven't owned them my whole life. As a long-time Boston Terrier owner, you know, I refer to my dog as the Rat Dog to her face. So very rude, very disrespectful, but I do that. And she doesn't seem to mind. Rachel, she's finally kind of got it together. Oh, by the way, my eyes glanced back to the Ligia page, and one of the links near the top is the words "the Conqueror Worm" in quotation marks. The Conqueror Worm. So that's the poem by Edgar Allan Poe. Okay. For some reason I didn't pick up on the name of the poem. That's awesome. That it's a reference to another worm book. Vale says, we had a Boston named Sox. I adored him. Yeah! Boston Terriers. They're like the cutest little gremlins. Um, they usually have a lot going on. Our first Boston Terrier, his eyes sort of were huge and bulged out of his head. And like our current Boston Terrier, she has more like human style eyes where they're slightly inset and like her eyelids are just kind of going over the eyelids. Like our old Boston Terrier, his eyes like globbed outward from his head and his eyelids would push like up around, like globbing out to go over. His eyes were not inset into his head at all. It was crazy. Um. Anyway, I'm getting distracted by so many things. I can't believe that I never looked up Ligeia and that it was also that there's an Edgar Allan Poe thing called the Conqueror Worm. Maybe I, an uncultured swine, need to read Edgar Allan Poe. And not just the one where there comes a rapping on the door. So yeah, Rachel, she had formed these bonds with all these people. It's only actually been like a few weeks and she's already sort of built this up. So that's pretty cool. Things are going pretty well for Rachel. And as for the last person on our list, Taylor. She's tying up loose ends. Her heart, Grinch style, grew 3 sizes that day. We were all very impressed with her behavior. You know, she only made one. She only lost one teammate. Well, not teammate, but one ally in a fight, and forced one enemy to, as the kids say, unalive themselves. Oh, yeah, Vale Sim. By the way, even though I feel like I say it too often, so it loses individual meaning, the art is gorgeous as always. Yes, no, it's great. I feel so silly that I accidentally posted it on the main channel when I was trying to send it in like a DM. But I don't know. I had looked away from the computer, and when I looked back, I was just like, I'm still in that chat, right? Anyway, so lovely spree image. It'll keep him in our minds and our hearts. Taylor, she's all regret filled and sad, you know. But she's like, I've got a plan and I'm sticking to it. Tomorrow morning. And she really she doesn't want to do whatever it is she's going to do. So it's clearly a whole thing. Anyway, we talked about Taylor long enough. She's the protagonist. She doesn't get as much screen time as me talking about some bullshit about Ligeia. In the powers, knowledge, and world building section, I kind of feel like I talked about all the powers enough, but I did want to read out where they said how it feels for Lizard's Tail's power. Let's see here. Boop, boop. Where is it? It's Lizard Tail's power was pressing against me. Even from the other side of the street, it penetrated my costume to the skin, making my skin tingle and ensuring that I was always aware of where he was. It was like the sensation of standing in front of a fire, just close enough to feel as though that heat had a physical form, just close enough to be bearable. It wasn't hot, though. It was cold, if anything. Pretty cool. One of those cool things. And then, also, where Citrine puts her power, apparently it says the area around them was somehow faded in terms of the colors there. the area she was affecting looked as though I were viewing it through colorblind eyes that were capable of only seeing yellow. Water wicked off of them as though they were waterproof, leaving them utterly dry, even in the wind and rain. So that's pretty fun. Some fun power stuff. And I thought all the Teeth's powers that we learned about were pretty cool too, if I'm being honest. And all the new powers were fun. Jacklight's thing introduces like a fun, like gimmicky power that it's like these little gravity wells basically. They're not like trying to crush people to death. They're just like distorting energy and momentum. Like that's pretty cool. Legion's like water spout power, pretty awesome. Having a healing power on the team, really cool. Codex, you had to die. Your power was evil. And seeing Othello's power in action was cool. I was glad we got to see that. Oh, and Animos's power, like I said. I think that power, we see it for 5 seconds. It's so compelling to me. I want to be Animos. Anyway. No bonus section today. Audience participation. Let's get right to it. It was... What do you think of the casual way the Undersiders and Ambassadors treat the death of one of the new members of the Ambassadors? Lillian says, I think it's objectively funny. Vale says, I think it speaks to the general attitudes of capes, especially villains overall. Capes die constantly. It is part of the gig. And they have done it long enough to not consider it to be a big deal. Yeah. Vic says, I feel like it's because Taylor sees it as their own fault, kind of. They were brand new Vile Capes who know what they were signing up for, in quotes. I think I agree. That's probably part of it, where it's like, from Taylor's perspective, it's like, you were just born as a cape, but that means you were just born. So it's like, not that big a deal that you're gone. That's how I had sort of interpreted it. But I agree. It's probably a big part of it is the who knew what they were signing up for aspect for Taylor. Greg says, to add to Vale's answer, the ambassadors especially care about the facade of being suave and unaffected because Cord requires it. Taylor might normally care more, but she was in full battle mode at the time. Yeah, those are all good answers, and I think you're right, generally. Vale says, also any cape with a number at the end of their name is one who has practiced dying. Well, okay, but the Codex isn't the one who is a Codex, too. It's a Lizard Tail, too, who's the 2. And Lizard Tail's doing just fine. Man, I feel like we don't see from Lizard Tail again, but like Lizard Tail will be so good at like being in the background of like Endbringer fights and stuff. Vale says Lizard Tail 2 died in my headcanon. Yeah, alright, fair. Well, he's at the second, so I definitely put him as II. Not numeral 2. Roman numeral 2. There is a Lizard Tail 11 at a future major event. Oh, I see. So that's the problem, is that I was reading those ones as eyes. It was actually 11. Anyway. I think I already know Vale's answer to this question, but I'd like to hear it in the audience participation section rather than the chat when I ask next week's question, do you think Taylor's relationship is stronger with Rachel or Lisa? Boom. Lines in the sand. Hard emotional truths. But it's a one or. But I mean, it could be a yes no. If you interpret this as a yes no question, I'll accept that. But like, I'm looking for more content, not less content. Anyway, let's bring it back to the old song, and while we're going, we might as well rewatch the speed draw. We got a thanks and a take care. Thank you, Vale. And normally Greg would cheers, but Greg is already gone. And I have plenty of time to say that the music used in this week's episode, as it has been, is Imago by ScarlettXOX. You can find her at twitch.tv/Scarlett_Rogue. Our Discord server can be found at, the link is in the channel description as well as the stream description. The author of the work being discussed can be supported on Patreon at patreon.com/Wildbow. The full text of the work is available for free online at parahumans.wordpress.com. There's also a fan-made audiobook of the entire work at audioworm.rain-online.org. And Vale just gave us a cheers on behalf of Greg's. On behalf of Greg. So what we're getting is the proxy cheers. I don't know how to feel about that. I'm gonna mute myself. Goodbye.